Right now, the National Weather Desk, San Antonio flooding. Torrential rains lead to flash flooding, sweeping cars into a swollen creek. At least 5 are dead, while the search for the missing continues.
Like following railroad tracks, and that is a classic signature, the I-35 corridor for flash flooding.
At least 20 homes are destroyed as a raging wildfire burns in Oregon.
There were 4 homes sitting here, all of it reduced to ashes in a matter of minutes.
We'll take a closer look at eruptions inside Yellowstone National Park.
That size of explosion happening when and where it did, you might only see once a century.
Bee populations are dwindling across the country, but not in this town.
And they take really good care of their bees overall.
And what you should do if you encounter a rip current in the ocean.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. 5 people are dead and at least 2 others still missing following Thursday morning's floods in San Antonio. The victims were in their cars when raging water swept them away. You can see many of those cars overturned in the flood. Police say it started with an accident. The water then swept 15 vehicles into the creek below. 10 people were rescued from trees and bushes nearly a mile away from where they entered the water. The flooding was triggered by more than 6 inches of rain in just a few hours. We have 2 reports, starting with Stephanie Esquivel, who spoke with the wife of one of the missing drivers.
It started floating, and I was like, oh, you got to get out. If it's moving, you're not going to be able to control it. Get out.
Angel Richards is the wife of 42-year-old Steve Richards, one of the drivers that hasn't been accounted for. Angel was on the phone with Steve while he was on his way to work when his car was swept away by water.
I can hear the car hitting up against stuff, and then you can hear the phone just water, and that was the last thing I heard.
Angel says she's called nearby hospitals and Steve's job to see if he ever made it. As the search continues, Angel says her hopes of finding Steve alive are dwindling away by the hour.
And I understand that there's certain things that they cannot say to me, but at this point I would rather just rip the Band-Aid off because I'm already knowing I'm going to get the worst news of my life.
Angel says she's still trying to understand what went wrong for more than a dozen cars to be swept off the roadway in the same area.
I just told my son that someone's going to have to give me answers. This is not normal.
Well, we're at the area right behind me where that accident really started. Now, that one man that spoke with us telling it took over an hour to get through all the traffic, and once he got closer to the scene is when he saw exactly what had happened. Now, in this video, you can just see just how high that water had gotten at that point, with cars having to slow down because of that accident. And one of the cars in the video is almost completely submerged in that high water. Others are completely turned around and facing the opposite direction.
So what caused the water to rise so quickly? San Antonio meteorologist Chris Suchan says it was a signature storm setup along with record rainfall.
We had those storms with high rainfall rates, in some cases exceeding 3 inches per hour. And we also had the phenomena of training storms, where storms develop and move right in behind another storm, like following railroad tracks. And that is a classic signature, the I-35 corridor for flash flooding. This went right on up to Dallas-Fort Worth here through Waco, where they were under flash flood warnings here. For the day, over 6 inches of rain that absolutely smashed the daily rainfall record in San Antonio. Last time we had a rainfall event of this magnitude, you have to go back to 2018, September of 2018, we had 6.08. So this was pretty close to that, just a little bit higher. This is the second highest for the month of June. That's the all-time mark from 1951. And this was the 10th highest rainfall in a single day in San Antonio. Look at those numbers here. Over 8 inches of rain in Schertz, over 7 inches in Leon Valley. These are all the highest totals I found within the city limits of each town and city you see here. Over 9 inches of rain in Helotes was the highest amount I found. And then look at that drop off. Fair Oaks Ranch, not even a half inch of rain here.
While the rain was falling in San Antonio, 2 tornadoes briefly touched down near Austin. Emily Miranda talked to affected families about their experience and how they plan to move forward.
Never been right in the middle of a tornado, which it was very intense.
Aaron Snow says his wife, who is 40 weeks pregnant, woke up early Thursday morning to a flash flood warning.
She's making fun of me because I looked at it and saw it and went back to sleep.
Within minutes was the tornado warning.
So we're running upstairs to grab the kids. There's 6 of them. And we're trying to get them down into the bathroom, into the tub.
Down the street, Marcus Gary and his wife were also moving to safety.
The wind really picked up. It was whistling through the windows. Windows were shaking back and forth, and it all lasted just about 3 or 4 minutes.
Now to Oregon, where gusty winds and dry conditions are fueling a wildfire east of Portland. So far, at least 20 homes have been destroyed and at least 2,000 other structures are under threat. As of this morning, it is 0% contained. Victor Park has more.
The owner of this property tells me there were 4 homes sitting here, all of it reduced to ashes in a matter of minutes. Cars, construction equipment, furniture, all of it just gone, and some of it still smoldering tonight.
I'm going through here and going, what a shame, what a shame.
David Barber has nothing left but a tablet, 2 photo albums, and his dogs. Many who live in Rowena are used to the threat of wildfires, often taking measures to protect their home before wildfire season begins. But several tell us this one came too early and too quick.
And I screamed to my family, "Hey guys, come on, help me."
Rodriguez spending hours pouring buckets of water from a hot tub.
We start putting water on the roof, on the walls, on the garden. We start putting water everywhere. Yeah, the heat, you will feel it in your face.
His home is still standing, but not his livelihood.
I lost my shop with all my tools, and I lost all my equipment.
This here's where my son lived, and it wiped him out totally.
It took Floyd Barber 30 years to make his last mortgage payment. In just minutes, flames wiped out all that hard work.
It started down there, and it was just here, quick. I mean, I never had a chance to grab, much of anything.
Barber says he and his son worked tirelessly to save what they could. What was it like being here while the fire was surrounding you?
It was hot. It's scary. But what do you do? What would you do?
So what's causing all this? Well, it's kind of a wind tunnel effect. Mother Nature abhors a vacuum. So what's going on is we have high pressure on the west side of the Cascades, lower pressure on the east side of the Cascades, and that air will flow down the gorge, accelerating, trying to fill up that vacuum of low pressure. Little basic meteorology right here, and that's creating that strong wind pattern we're seeing right now in the gorge.
Now to Yellowstone National Park, where a small eruption was caught on camera recently. Scientists say it's just the latest in a string of blasts they have been tracking since a much larger explosion last summer. Michael Santos-Coy delves into what is causing the activity and what's being done to keep tourists safe.
New video shows a small eruption at Yellowstone's Black Diamond Pool. It happened May 31st in Biscuit Basin, the same area that saw a much bigger explosion last July. Michael Pollan, the lead scientist in charge of the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, says the Biscuit Basin has a history of small eruptions, especially in the Black Diamond Pool area where hydrothermal explosions have been active for most of the 2000s. But Pollan describes last year's explosion as an unusual event.
That sized explosion happening when and where it did is, that kind of thing you might only see once a century so in Yellowstone, but those sorts of explosions are not that uncommon in general.
Pollan says there were no clear warning signs before that blast. Geologists later discovered rocks from the explosion laying near the surface of the pool, a clue that it was a shallow eruption. Since then, the area has experienced several small eruptions, but it's still unclear what to expect next.
They don't have to be big to cause damage. It just has to happen in the wrong place at the wrong time. So we need to better monitor those kinds of events and also try to understand whether or not there's any way to anticipate them, because obviously it would be nice to be able to provide some advance warning before something like that happens.
Pollan says temperature fluctuations, changing chemicals, or electromagnetic shifts could signal an upcoming blast.
We have deployed some sensors out there. We're hoping to do more this summer.
The goal is to install permanent seismic equipment and microphones to better monitor activity in Biscuit Basin. And while research continues, Pollan reminds visitors that warning signs around the basin are posted for a reason. Thermal areas can be dangerous, and the best way to stay safe is on the boardwalks.
And coming up on the National Weather Desk, honeybee populations are declining across the country, but that's not the case in one Virginia town. We'll find out why, and we'll help you better understand how lightning forms.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Honeybee populations are declining across the country, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, but in a Virginia town, the story is different. Janya Nordello has more.
It's a constant effort to try to improve the situation.
Phil Blevins is an agriculture extension agent in Washington County, Virginia. He tells me honeybee populations have been declining since 1989, when a virus wiped out most of the colonies. Since honeybees aren't a native species, local beekeepers like David Miller are the reason our region is buzzing with bees.
We're made up of totally backyard sideline beekeepers, and they take really good care of their bees overall.
Both Miller and Blevins explain 1/3 of all our food is dependent on honeybee pollination.
Honeybees pollinate 100% of the almond crop. Apples, they pollinate about 90% of the apple crop. They're also important for crops like alfalfa and cotton.
Apart from crops, bees bring us products like wax and honey. Although bees are thriving in our region, it hasn't always been smooth sailing.
You have ups and downs in the beekeeping population because in the wintertime sometimes there are huge losses.
Those losses have consistently been around 30%, which can be detrimental for proper crop growth. This is why they urge the community to play a part to keep the bees safe.
If they are treating for problem insects in their landscape or in the garden, that they follow the label on the product that they're using to protect pollinators.
One honeybee can pollinate 5,000 plants a day. So next time you see a bee, remember it keeps our food growing and our world blooming.
It may not be the usual thing you think about when it comes to outdoor healing, but new research shows listening to birds has health benefits. Liz Bonus has that story.
If you listen, it's captivating. But while most of us are running around loving the great outdoors,
it's just soul healing. Like the last couple of days with it being so nice and sunny outside, it's just like a complete pivot in my mental health.
we don't realize if we tune in, our mental health could get an added boost with the soothing melody of birds. After ruling out the benefits of blue and green spaces, things like seeing trees and hearing running water, researchers found a whole host of benefits to hearing birds on our mental health that can last up to 8 hours. Part of that benefit may come from focus. It's sort of like yoga, mindfulness for your brain.
Mindfulness is really the art, actually, of paying attention to the present moment as it is without judgment.
When you see birds, they simply command your attention.
It can be a practice that you do anytime during the day, just to stop and pay attention and notice maybe your body, maybe your breathing, or even just focusing on one thing at a time can be a mindfulness practice.
But those who watch and listen, in the way you just have to watch birds, also appear to have less anxiety, depression, and stress in the aftermath.
Lightning is fabulous to see, but what is lightning made of? Meteorologist Violet Skyborg gives us a look at the electric energy coming from the clouds and also offers tips to stay safe.
Well, lightning forms when electrons at the base of a thunderstorm start to zigzag downwards, known as a stepped leader. As that leader nears the ground, it draws up positive charges from the surface, and that stepped leader merges with a streamer from the surface, leading to a strong electrical current force. Now, as that electric current becomes stronger, it's what we see called a return stroke, which can travel at 60,000 miles per second. And this may repeat several times over the same path, causing what we see as a flicker. This entire process takes place in less than 1 second. And lightning can strike in many different varieties, but the most common is inside of the cloud and also cloud to ground. There's 2 types of cloud to ground strikes, though. One that comes from the top of the thunderstorm, a positive strike, and one that comes from the base, a negative strike. Positive are less common but more dangerous. They have higher voltage, about 1 billion volts. They last longer, about 10 times, and they travel further, up to 25 miles away from the base of a thunderstorm, whereas a negative strike up to 10 miles away. And the longest strike we've ever seen on record traveled 477 miles, but it was from cloud to cloud. Now, when you're outside and lightning strikes, the fatalities we've seen from 2006 to 2025 are most frequent if you're under a tree or near water, but also notice when you're outside, open field, a yard, also quite dangerous. And some other stats is that 80% of people that were struck by lightning were males. If you're outside, shoes is a common myth. Rubber soles do not protect you from lightning, but yes, being inside a car will protect you. Of course, a building is safer, but if you're inside a car, make sure not to touch the windows or outside surfaces.
We're just about halfway through June, and if you missed this week's full strawberry moon, don't worry. There's still a chance to see some pretty cool sky shows the rest of this month. Here's meteorologist Kate Alexander.
On June the 17th, a double star will be visible in the sky, but technically it's the planet Mars and the star Regulus, the brightest star in the constellation Leo, the Lion. By June 19th, we can expect a triple conjunction of the moons Saturn and Neptune in the eastern pre-dawn sky. It's a fairly rare alignment. And on June 27th, the Buddha meteor shower will reach its peak. There usually aren't as many meteors as the Perseid or the Gemini meteor showers, but there will likely be some occasional bursts visible in the east towards the constellation Boötes after sunset.
This week in our podcast of Off the Radar, in honor of Father's Day, Emily Gracie sat down with a woman who is honoring her late father by sharing his story in a new book called The Weather Officer. Here's a preview of the episode.
Father's Day often brings up stories of dads who shaped us in ways we didn't realize until much later. But what if your father's work didn't just shape you, it shaped history?
My dad being my hero, I just felt that he was like always super fantastic at everything and never had any type of hardship or any type of disappointment.
As one of America's first Black meteorologists, Alonzo Smith Jr. was a trailblazer in the field, serving in the military while helping to revolutionize how we predict weather for aviation.
He was able to take that passion and turn it into an incredible career, and he leaves a wonderful legacy behind.
Today we're going off the radar with his daughter, Kelly Porter, author of his book, The Weather Officer. This isn't just a story of one man's career, it's a father's life seen through his daughter's eyes. Untold history finally brought to light, and a promise kept that somehow fulfilled both their dreams.
I knew that I had to keep this promise to my father more than anything else. That was my motivator.
You can find Off the Radar anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. And now time for a short break, but first we take in views over scenic Montana. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great Friday. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.